Rice. He owns the franchise. He just owns the franchise. That's all there is to it. Tom Slayton joins us from Rice Trader, which he worked at with the USDA for years. Tom, good noon to you. Great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, we're glad you're here because rice is the #1 thing I'm watching now. You call it the diplomatic crop. Why is rice the diplomatic crop?
This term comes from a history of heavy government involvement in the rice trade. Dan Morgan used this term in describing the rice industry about 20 years ago in his book, The Merchant of Grain.
When you look, Tom Slayton, at rice, and when you look at it as a local coverage, we see Chicago rice up, which I quote. You, of course, look globally, and you have a note recently, Vietnamese rice is down for this, that, and the other reason. How should Americans look at this surge in rice if each nation has its own prices?
First thing that people have to realize is that the Chicago market for rice is a very, very thin market. It doesn't play the same role in the world community as it does for the other grains or soybeans or cotton. It's thinly traded and really doesn't represent what's going on in the world market overall.
Which is the price that we should follow? Which nation has the benchmark for the price of rice?
Thailand and Vietnam have much more important price benchmarks.
You mentioned hoarding recently. I saw an FT article in Davos on hoarding that sort of got the band rolling here. You really push back. You say, yes, there's some hoarding going on, but there's some nations where they're not, where they sort of went over the top here in recent years and they pulled back their stocks a little bit. Tell us about the dynamics of storage in rice.
Well, basically, rice is stored at all levels. There are literally millions and millions of farmers in Asia that are growing rice. There are millions and millions of consumers that are storing a bag of rice, you know, maybe it's 100 pounds. So if these consumers get nervous, they can create speculative fever that has the very same effect as the hedge funds and the speculators on Wall Street and in Chicago.
Tom Slayton, when you look at the recent protests, I'll start with Algeria a month or so ago, and then on to Tunisia, the politics of Egypt, and then we see Jordan and Yemen. How do you link commodity prices, and particularly your expertise in rice, how do you link that into the social unrest we see in these impoverished lands?
Well, in those three particular countries, the price of wheat is much more important than rice. They are wheat consumers, not rice consumers.
So, okay, rice doesn't matter, you say. At what point are we near a point where rice becomes an item of protest, or is that somewhere off if oil goes over 100, et cetera?
If we look at prices in Vietnam, over the last 2 months, they've actually fallen $65 a ton. So I'm quite amused by the article that Javier Blas had in the Financial Times last week. In Thailand, we're also seeing prices generally declining. They made some big sales last week to Indonesia, so we've seen prices come up $10 a ton. Right. But it's quite separate from what we're seeing in the other commodities.
Great. What a clinic. Tom Slayton, thank you so much. We'll have you back on rice.